Since Stanley went to the hospital, Penny went to see him every day. Even though it wasn't allowed, the hospital let Penny visit because he made Stanley happy. But when a doctor saw something weird, everyone was surprised. Penny didn't just visit Leonard to keep him company. The cat was secretly bringing something for the old man. Stanley, the doctor who found out what it was ready to talk to Leonard about it. But what was Leonard hiding? To find out, let's go back to the beginning. Penny the cat had been visiting Leonard, his grumpy 85-year-old owner, every day since he went to the hospital. Even though this wasn't allowed, the hospital let Penny visit because he made Leonard happy. Penny was really friendly with everyone at the hospital, which cheered them up too. But things changed recently. Stanley, one of the doctors who took care of Leonard, noticed something strange. Penny started acting differently. Instead of spending time with people, he stayed mostly with Leonard. Stanley wondered what could have happened to make Penny change. Since Stanley loved cats, he decided to follow Penny when he left the hospital to find out more. Penny was fairly easy to follow because he walked very calmly and rubbed up against people's legs if they paid him any attention. Penny was one of the nicest cats he had ever met, so that just made Stanley more eager to learn what happened to make Penny change his behavior. He wanted to help the cat and make him more comfortable again. Eventually, the cat made it to the old house, which was about a 20-minute walk from the hospital, and entered through the cat door. At first, Stanley was very nervous about what he was going to do, but he just walked up to the door and rang the bell. However, no one answered the doorbell, but Stanley knew someone was in the house because he had noticed the curtains move a little. Stanley was sure something was going on there, but he had no idea exactly what. What was certain was that he would watch the cat more closely at the hospital. Unfortunately, Penny didn't show up at the hospital the next day or even the day after. Stanley feared that he had scared the mysterious person inside the house and that he would never allow Penny to return to the hospital. So, he was feeling a little guilty about following the cat home. Without Penny, Leonard's grumpiness escalated and he started to be very mean to everyone. His behavior was terrible, and it made everyone's job harder than it needed to be. Eventually, a new visitor showed up. This was strange because no one except Penny had ever visited Leonard. Stanley discovered that the name of the visitor was Thomas, and it didn't seem like they were related, which was very strange. Additionally, Thomas' visits didn't improve Leonard's mood very much. One day, Stanley decided he was going to ask Thomas about his relationship with Leonard. However, the staff had to respect people's privacy, so he didn't have any right to do that. He also didn't have any right to ask Thomas to stop visiting, but Stanley was concerned. Eventually, he communicated those security concerns, and over the next 2 days, Leonard didn't receive visits. On the first day, he was very angry, but on the second day, he wasn't interacting with anyone. Eventually, Penny went to the hospital again, and security alerted Stanley. After all, he had a plan. Now, when Stanley was alerted, he rushed to Leonard's room and closed the door. When Penny arrived, the cat didn't know what to do about the closed door, but this gave Stanley time to sneak up on Penny and try to pick the animal up. Usually, the cat was very sweet, but to Stanley's surprise, the cat didn't want to be held. So, he wriggled out of Stanley's grasp, starting a chase. Stanley knew he looked ridiculous chasing a cat around the hospital, but eventually, Penny entered an office by mistake, allowing Stanley to close the door and try to grab the cat. The first few times, Stanley got some scratches, but he managed to get a hold of Penny. Finally, Stanley had a chance to try to get to the bottom of things. When he looked closer at Penny's collar, it turned out there was a hidden compartment on the collar. It was the size of a battery, and there seemed to be a pressure system. When activated, the cat was pleasant and calm. So Stanley started to understand that the cat was trained to bring things to Penny using the little compartment on his collar. But what was the cat bringing to Leonard? When he finally managed to open the compartment, Stanley was shocked. There was white powder inside. It all started to make sense, and his first instinct was to run to Leonard's room and confront the old man. He was exploiting Penny, and that made Stanley very angry. He was such a sweet cat. He didn't deserve to be treated that way. However, Stanley had to play it smart. He decided that the best thing he could do was call the police. Stanley and the hospital staff provided all the information they could. The police said they would contact Thomas, and when he was confronted by the police, he knew there was no way out of it and he might as well be honest. Eventually, the police went to the house, and no one opened the door, but they had a warrant, so they broke in. In the house, they found two people who claimed to be members of Leonard's family, but they turned out to be his accomplices. The police also found a lot of illegal things, so they made arrests and started to investigate. It was time to confront Leonard, so the police went to the hospital. When Stanley and the officers got to Leonard's room, the man started screaming. He was losing his mind because he knew what was happening. He probably feared this moment since Penny's and Thomas' visits stopped, and he knew there wasn't much he could do to get out of the situation. It turns out that the substance they found in Penny's collar had been identified. It was cocaine. Leonard and his accomplices were drug dealers, and they were using the cat to get drugs to the old man. He was an addict, so when the cat didn't show up, he experienced withdrawal symptoms. That's what made him so grumpy and irritated. Stanley couldn't believe how the story was unfolding. Leonard and his accomplices were drug dealers. They worked out of the house he had visited, which is why they didn't open the door when he showed up. But thanks to the doctor's actions, Leonard and his crew had been found out, and there was now enough evidence to arrest them. Shortly after everything went down, Leonard was transported to a prison hospital to await trial. The doctors predicted he had only a couple of years left to live, so life as he knew it was over, one way or the other. His accomplices were also awaiting trial, and Penny was completely alone. There was no one left to care for him. The good news is that Penny ended up happy despite all he went through. Stanley made sure he found a good home by helping him get adopted. When people heard about Penny's story, he became famous in the neighborhood, and many wanted to know more about him. Eventually, Stanley decided he wanted to adopt Penny himself. He had grown fond of the cat and thought they were a perfect match. Penny would have a caring home and could still visit the hospital to cheer people up. It was a great outcome for everyone except the bad guys. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.